Welcome to the Perspectives Podcast. My name is Bruce. Thank you for joining again. If you have been listening the last few weeks, I want to say thank you to friends out there who have sent little notes and of encouragement. That's been really cool. It makes it all worthwhile to know that there's some folks out there that are actually listening. And I promised my kids I'd never say like and subscribe, so I'm not going to do it. But if you want to share, if you feel like there's a podcast that would really encourage someone in particular, please help share it just for that purpose, to be an encouragement. And I wanted to say one thing. The guest that I'm about to interview today, his name's Radosh. He is an NGO leader, an innovator, missional thinker. He's also a pastor here in Cluj, Romania. And it got me thinking of the different ways in which we are all bringing light and salt, as Jesus said, the kingdom was, through us in this time that's so unpredictable. There's so much uncertainty happening right now. Winter's coming. All the news with the various energy crisis takes. The war in Russia continues, inflation, the political crisis seemingly everywhere. We have such an amazing hope. And I hope that these conversations encourage you in that hope that Jesus from the Father has come into this world. Our Creator put on flesh and walked this earth with us. He loves us. He's with us. This world is broken, but it's being mended. And it's being mended through you and I every day when we put on this faith and we become love. We become faith. And we care. We care about people and we get into their lives, and not as perfect people that have all the answers, but those that are being healed and those that are being loved and being filled and mended ourselves. And so I hope that these conversations encourage you. They are teaching me a lot about myself. When I go back to edit some of these podcasts, I am just amazed how many times I say and ah, and I don't just directly ask the question. I think in these circles. It's been a humbling experience. I'm thankful for it. I hope that maybe I can get better at this, but I just want to encourage you that you are loved. And I've been encouraged the last few weeks, even in the midst of all this chaos, as I hear some of these stories as well. God is writing a story, co-authoring with us. And our responsibility is simply to let him in, let him write, and let him have his way, because he truly does love us, and he has the best interest for not just for us, but the world around us. Let's be culture makers. Let's bring the kingdom like Jesus did, humbly and one foot at a time, one person, one heart at a time. So thank you for listening, and let's get to our interview. Welcome to the podcast, Radosh.
Thank you for invitation.
So Radosh and I haven't known each other very long, but I just was practicing his last name, Radosh Calugar.
Yes, that's good.
And he is telling me that it actually means monk.
Uh-huh.
So tell me about growing up with the name Radosh the monk.
Yes, even in the school, sometimes the teacher teaches me about this, holy monk, come
to the front.
Come to the front. And also when I was in army, I work in a monastery, and the monks from there, they say, hey, but this has to be from God, so you have to come and become a monk.
Okay.
And I say, no way, this is not my call to be a monk.
You are pretty close.
Yeah, some they say yes.
Tell us about growing up in Romania. Yeah, just give us an overview of your life and childhood.
So I lived 9 years in the communism. So I'm born in 80s. So the revolution came in Romania in 89. I even remember I was at the cinema with my sister. She's 2 years older than me. And my father came, and running after us and telling us, hey, the revolution starts, you have to come home. So this was before Christmas. And then all these days in the Christmas times, we stood in the house and we heard, the guns and the noise in the flat. What I remember in that times, it was the times with my father when I have to go in the morning, 5 o'clock, to stay in line for the store to be open, and then the store was open only at 8. So you have to wait for the truck with the food to come. So when they open a small gate, that everybody run in the store, because in that times when the food is done, you go home without food. So parents needs to take their children to prove that you are many in the families, because they give you by ration. I mean, if you are a family with 2 children, they give you as much as is in the family.
Where in Romania were you?
So I was in Cluj-Napoca, where we are now. I was born in this city. So my parents, they have a normal job in the factory. In that times, everybody worked in a factory. Not like today, you don't find people to work in a factory anymore. In Romania, maybe all the youth want to be in the offices. They had a normal job. I didn't say that we struggle so much with money, but the problem is, even if you had money, you didn't have for what to spend, because the stores was empty almost all the time. There was a bread store and it was a meat store. So you have to stay in line, one day for bread and one day for meat.
So you're 8 years old. You still have vivid memories of
Yes.
this period.
Yes.
Take us through the next few years. What was that like? The
So
transition.
the transition, I mean, after the revolution, the first years, it was a hard transition even for the Romania. But as a kid, I can say I have a nice childhood. In my grandparents living 30 kilometers from Cluj, I always was there in the summer, and I have another 7 cousins, and we have great time there, helping our grandparents with the work in the field. And then in my teenagers, I come from an Orthodox family. Now we switch to the spiritual part. My grandma, she's still alive. She's 92. She still is Pentecostal. So
we have that in common. We have
yeah.
grandmothers still alive that will go to their grave as Pentecostals.
Oh, good.
Grandmas, if you're listening, we love you.
Yes,
and we may
love
share
you.
some things that maybe don't agree with. It's okay.
I just visited my grandmother yesterday, and she's a lovely woman. She
That's
have
great.
nice stories from the
Now,
war and everything.
Are your parents still alive?
Yes, my parents live with my grandma now in the village. They used to live in the city, but here in Romania, it's like when you are retired, you have a house that belongs to the family in the village from generation to generation. And many of the families, they don't sell at that house. That will stay in the family for generations.
Right.
I may move there when I'm retired.
That's interesting.
village.
So would you consider it a traditional Orthodox family?
I cannot say we were traditional. We didn't like so much to be engaged, in the Orthodox religion. We went more in our time. We went to the Pentecostal church, but with friends, we consider ourselves Orthodox, because maybe from Ukraine. When you say Ukraine, you say Orthodox. When you say Romanian, you say Orthodox. And we didn't want to stay away of our friends. When I was 12, it was a time when the first non-denominational church started in town. So first my sister joined that church in worship, in praise and worship, singing, and then we went to that church, and I remember when I was 12, 13, going for Sunday school. I love to be in the Sunday school, and I have great 2 ladies, teachers, sisters that take care of us, and we were a group of boys from my neighborhood that we always went to church because we love, this Sunday school. And then I was also having my bad times when I have not been in church and being away of church. But it was like a teenager, back and forth.
So during these teenage years, what was life like in Romania?
Oh, it was a good life already, but it was hard. People didn't have so much money, 7, 8, 9, 10 years after the revolution, people were still struggling. I mean, even now after 30 years, people are struggling, but there are more opportunities. In that time, was few opportunities, and the corruption was big, big. Yeah, I think that for Romania, maybe for other countries also, it's that in the politic went also some people that were been before in the politic, in the communists. And even now, there are, I think that even now we have in Romania people in the as a politician that they have been communists. And then so the transition time, we are still, I can say, in the transition time, and I always compare with the 40 years, being in the wilderness. And I think that the generation needs 40 years for a change in mentality and everything. So now, slowly, things I can see that maybe come in the politics more young people with new vision. But I think that if I look to Slovakia, Hungary, and Poland, they are in front of us. Also because they also, in this country, revolution was earlier than in Romania, so they had time with everything. But many say that now Hungary, they go back, or so, and they said that in Romania it's maybe much more freedom. It's not so much control till now.
Those people in power really know how to stay in power.
They know.
Once they get it.
Or if they don't stay, they will bring their nephews and children,
right.
and there will be a continuity, I said, maybe in the same way with corruption and everything.
Yeah, I think our listeners can identify with the generational mentality and those in power. Well, we'll get back to some of the Soviet influence, and Romania's response during the war has been incredible, and I know that's where you've been focused the last 6 months heavily. I want our listeners to hear about this.
It's already 6 months?
It's been 6 months today.
Yes. Wow.
It's the anniversary.
I didn't know.
The podcast will release next week, but it's been 6 months, and unbelievable how time is. It's like coming up from the ocean under the water and looking around, catching your breath, and the reality's changed.
Yes.
It's been such a wild time. But before we get to some of the present world where Radosh is living and working and serving, I want to go back to your journey of faith. So you raised Orthodox, or culturally Orthodox, and yet now you're being influenced by a message, a reality of Jesus coming to earth and a personal relationship. Yes. So tell us about your personal relationship with God as you look back at Radosh, the teenager. Yeah. What was God doing? Was there any specific moments that he spoke to you or introduced himself to you? I saw the providence of God in my life in those times when I was a teenager. I remember a specific day and time. It was the beginning of January. My birthday was coming I will turn 19. And I felt that I play games with God. And really, I have been with my friends for the new year. I was drunk, and I told them, drunk being, that I will give up, all my life, and I will focus on God and I will live for God, And my friends, they laugh on me, and they say, okay. They knew that I go to church time to time, but they knew how I am. I was, very out loud. I was always joking, always liking to party, and I was in front always, And I decided to baptize on my birthday. And when I told my parents, they was shocked. And they called the pastor and says, hey, don't do that. He's not prepared. Pastor says, now is his time. If I don't do now with him, I don't think that maybe later I will not have the chance. In that times, for me, being an Orthodox, it was, that moment that you switch. I didn't do it because I have to. Nobody asked me. I felt, and even now I know that it was another
starting point for me, but very important, that helped me a lot. That was the starting point of...
You were 19.
I was 19. I invited my friends to my birthday, and they didn't know that I did the baptism. And when they came, and because I do it in my flat, my parents' flat, and they came and they say, "Hey, Raresh," they saw lots of people there, and they say, "Hey, we have a surprise for you, a new club opened, and then we will go tonight, let's go party, it's your birthday." And then it was somebody there and said, "Raresh can't go anymore, maybe where you go, but you can come where he's going." I didn't know what to do with my life, really. And even now I said that I was saved by God. In that moment when God showed in my life, then I start to dream big. And then I know that everything that even now I am or I do, it's because of his call in my life. I felt that I have to go to army. I mean, they didn't call me, but I said that I feel that I have to do that. In that time, the army was mandatory, so you need to go for 1 year. So I joined the army for 1 year, but my goal was to preach the gospel. So I joined the army only with this goal in mind, that I will be there for 1 year only to preach the gospel. And it happened. I have great stories, and I experienced God in miracles ways, and sharing to a crowd, it was really, God was used, my time there, because I put this time aside, for him to go there and share the gospel. So I came back from the army, and then I met an American missionary. For 6 months, I have a normal job, and I prayed. And in this time, God spoke to this missionary, Elliot, to call me to be part from his team as the first, team player of his mission. I joined him, and I started a journey of faith, being my mentor and the one that influenced a lot my spiritual life. Then Matt moved to my parents' village, and his desire was to preach the gospel to these villages until the mountains. So he bought the horse and the wagon. In those times, I didn't know that I will walk in the footprints of Wesley, and then I will become a Methodist, because in that time was no Methodist in Romania, and all his principles and teachings that he taught us was coming from the Wesleyan part, caring for the marginalized people and caring for the widows and orphans, and he implemented this in our hearts, and even until today, we care about this. Going from village to village, the first question where the people ask me, and in Romania is like this: what is your church? From what church you are coming? In that time, I was part from a charismatic church. What to tell to the elderly people in the village, charismatic, not even in the city, people knew what it's a charismatic, as a personality, but not maybe as a denomination and I didn't want to have my identity in that. And it not was me, and I knew that, but I want to find my way. I was so upset, and I went back from an evangelism tour that we did every year, and then I was so frustrated that I can't tell the people what I am. So I asked God, and in one night I stayed and I prayed, and I say, if you don't tell me what I am, I will not go back to these people. So tell me what to tell them. When I go and they ask me what I am, why to tell them? And I hear very clear, you are a born-again Orthodox. Go with this message. That gave me so much freedom, And then for the first time, I was so eager to go and tell the people what I am, And then the people, they didn't know what it's born again. In the Orthodox tradition, they didn't talk too much about this. It's born from the heaven. Even it's existing in the tradition of the Orthodox, fathers, they talk about this, but they lost this. And other lost this, even we as Methodists, maybe in America, many churches, they lost this, but this is so important. The only thing that the people need to come in a relationship with God is to be born from above. So I went with this message, and I remember I had been in a village, and it was a celebration, Orthodox celebration, and everybody was home. So I went from house to house with the team, and I remember that I stood on a bench up because I can't look farther, the people, there was a crowd. For the first time I have a big crowd, and I have a cross. And I tell the team, hey, from now on, we are born again Orthodox. So this is our message, They receive so good the gospel and everything only because we identify with them.
You were not a foreigner coming. You were Radish, the Romanian.
Yes.
Within the context of the culture.
Yes.
So how powerful. I wish the West would learn these ways. Were you wearing the collar?
No.
Did you grow a long beard?
No. I wear only cross, and that was a sign that we are the same, wearing a cross, a simple cross. And also we took crosses and we give them as a gift to the people. They took the crosses, but all the brochures that we have, they wanted to have. Until that time, we tried to give them the brochure with some messages, and they say, no, you are a Jehovah Witness, or I don't know what,
right.
We don't want to read your stuff, But when we were going there, as we are Orthodox, what's mean an Orthodox? To be right with God. So we all have to become Orthodox in our beliefs. Mm-hmm. We all need to be right with God. So it not was something that we made up. It was truly that I found in me that I need to be right with God and have a right standing and His righteousness. And then I can tell the others, because they didn't know what's mean to be an Orthodox.
You can educate them on more than just the cultural relevance of Orthodoxy, the rituals, but the meaning.
The meaning.
Isn't that what Jesus did as He comes to His own people, to the Jewish people? He had to actually help them see not just the letter of the law, but the spirit within it. Tell me the response of the Orthodox Church as you come in. Were you seen as an imposter or what?
So I plant a new church in town, in Cluj, where I am now, and I say, born again Orthodox. I have been to a funeral. It was an army general. He was not a believer, actually, but his daughter came to my church, and she asked me to go and to do the funeral. She told to the other priest that was in charge with, the cemetery and everything, that a born-again Orthodox priest will come. And he was like, what's that, And I was there, with the collar and the shirt. In that time, I have not been a Methodist. I have not been confirmed by nobody, I confirm myself. I'm a born-again Orthodox priest. Here I am. This is my call. And I did the funeral. So the real, Orthodox that was looking for an evangelical church, for them was a good step because they felt safe in our environment because we didn't judge them.
You were not opposed?
Yes.
You're just trying to bring more.
Yeah. And others, they was drawn by the name. Oh, well, what's this? I have never heard about, and let's go and see.
The difference between the Catholic Church, the primary difference is the Catholic Church and then the Roman Orthodox. To a Westerner, they look very similar. What would you say are some of the distinctives between the two?
Orthodox, their emphasis is a lot on resurrection. So the most important thing for the Orthodox is the resurrection, and even you can see in the church. On the Roman Catholic, the emphasis is the birth of Jesus. Always when you are in a Roman Catholic church, you see, the Mother of God with a child and everything, But for the Orthodox, this, resurrection, it's something that they all look for, and even the holiday, the celebration of the resurrection, it's one of the most important celebration for an Orthodox, and even they live with this expectation. In Orthodox liturgy, for 3 hours, they stay there and they don't move. Even my children say, Daddy, I'm glad that I'm not an Orthodox because I don't know if I can stay still for 3 hours and not move. But why? Because it's an expectation, because they don't know when in the time of the liturgy, God will show up. So you are there and you have this expectation of God coming and meet you. So that's why you stay there and you are concentrated. And I love this image, On the other side, the Roman Catholic, they stay, they wait until when? Until the priest take out the body and the blood of Jesus. And that's the moment when you know that Jesus is present. And then everybody is there with their mind and soul thinking that they will meet God, So in the Orthodox, the expectation, it's always, for the Orthodox, it's mystical, and it's a lot what it's happened behind the veil. And you don't know when God it's working, and that's why you have to be present there at the liturgy, because there God will show up. I don't know how it's for us as evangelical, and even now I put this question because we don't have this expectation maybe coming to church. It's more emotional than, being there, present with your mind, your soul, your spirit, and thinking that God will meet you there.
I think in a future podcast we can come and talk more about Orthodox practice theology, because it's been fascinating for me over the last few years. And you're right, like the Catholic Church, you'll see Jesus hanging on a cross. You won't see that as much in Romanian or Ukrainian Orthodox, Slavic Orthodox. It's an empty cross. It's resurrection. And the liturgy, for those in the West that are mostly in evangelical circles, they don't really understand or haven't been taught that the liturgy is the same liturgy that's been passed down from the early 1st, 2nd century church.
Yes.
That's why right worship.
Right worship, yes.
They are maintaining kind of the order of service, which goes through the whole gospel.
For 1 year, it's the reading of the whole gospel. Yeah.
In a calendar year,
yes,
you're getting the whole gospel preached through the actual liturgy. And so when it's in another language, it's hard to understand what's taking place.
It was hard for the Romanian because it was Slavic until, year of, 1000 or 1000 something. So that's why Romanian, it's a Latin language, but we have a lot of Slavic words in because of the liturgy, Orthodox liturgy that was in Slavic for so many. Because here was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, so the Reformation was present here. In Romania, Reform and Catholics are, most of them, they are Hungarian. We have Greek Catholics, but Greek Catholics have Orthodox liturgy, and that's a little bit different story.
It's quite a mix.
There have been some ministries, maybe coming from a Wesleyan background, but not Methodist, United Methodist or Methodist, And so the bishop came to visit us in that time where we were born-again Orthodox. So he stood with us, and he watching us what we do and how we are, and he said, but you are Methodist, but you don't know. And it was real like this. I have not knew that it can be a denomination that let me to manifest myself without put me in a box. And when the bishop came, he says, I'm not here to take something from you. I'm here to add, if I can add. So for me, this was a relief. I said, hey, but you cannot take this from me. You say, I'm a wild guy. I don't do things like the church, do things. Sometimes I'm out of this, But he said, hey, that's not a problem. And then he says that if I want to go to a seminary in Estonia, because we have seminaries only in Estonia and in Germany. In that time, in 2011, they opened a program, an English program for a distant study. So I was there studying with Russian, Estonian, Finland, and other. But what was for me so beautiful and nice, that I have teachers from different backgrounds. So I experienced different kind, even Orthodoxy, Greek Catholics, or so this opened my mind in a way that I want this kind of experience, in a seminary or in a place that will not put me in a doctrine and to stay there.
Here's the system, here's your beliefs, here's your church
It's a structure,
service.
you will do everything like
this. We call it church in a box. Here's your franchise model.
Yes.
And so that's really beautiful. So God had allowed you to hold these different ideas and actually interact with them, but you had the freedom to back to Romania and continue to do what was in your heart. We're in a building right now, and so I'm going to ask you to fast forward because we're nicely into the podcast. We're in a building right now that's actually was a hotel, and now it's full of all kinds of...
And it is a hotel.
It still is a hotel where we are right now doing the podcast, but there's many NGOs and different collaborative organizations that are working together, serving in many beautiful ways. Take us up to today, if you could, over the last few years.
I had a vision to create a community center. So I didn't want to have a building or a church building. I said that I don't want to have a building that I open for our programs. Sunday, Wednesday, Tuesday, and the people will stay away of us because Methodism is nothing. It means nothing in Romania. The people, they don't know. Because we don't care so much about the name. Yes, we care the heritage, the Wesleyan heritage, and from the early church, from the early Wesleyan type of doing things, we want to go back there. And it's very interesting, and even other Methodists recognize that we went back. We were the first United Methodists in Romania. I brought the Methodists in Romania, and we went back to the roots because there is our heart, to stay with marginalized, to preach to the widows, to the orphans. We have orphanages. We work in this direction. I remember it was a Sunday morning. We were in a garage with the church that I planted. And at the end of the program, we gathered few people, and we started to pray. And I start to pray for everything that is now in this building. Hotel, more NGOs, that we will run different projects, to have a conference room, to have rooms for people that they need, like they come for cancer treatment in town, to have a counseling office, to have a youth cafe like here, and I name each of these.
Did you pray for a podcast?
No, until we have them. Well, I didn't know what's the podcast in that times. And we were moving towards this vision. We were praying for more than 6-7 years for such a things to happen. In 2016, I rent in this hotel one conference room for our meetings. And then I rented another part until the landlord came to me and says, "Why don't you take the entire hotel?" This was before pandemic. It was very expensive. I said, yes, I would love to have, because I think that here my vision or our vision as a church can, come to life. And then pandemic came, and all the hotels and everything went down. Last year in May, we started talk again about renting the hotel, and it was a step in faith. We didn't have the money. We didn't, I know only that this is the place, and I know the people that I need to call to be part of this. I go to these people and I say, if you come with me in this, I dare to go. If not, myself, I will not do this. So the people were, yes, we are with you, and I think that this is what it's in our heart, so let's go and do this. Short than 6 months, everything come together. The NGOs that we wanted to be here, they came, and even more, and came to be part of this vision. So now it's in a live place, 30 rooms, 10 for the hotels, the other for all the projects that we have here. One of the things that we didn't know is that God prepared this place for the war, to be a place of refugees. And even our name, because we didn't say hotel, we say Han. Han in Romanian is the old name for the hotel. And you see we have only a front gate and then a big yard. And in the old times, all the horses were in the yard, because it was a safe place for the night.
Yeah, when you come here, it feels like you really are stepping back into the Middle Ages. It's not a horse, it's your car.
Yes,
you're parking in the courtyard, we would call it. And so, yeah, it really is a little haven, a little hub. You talked about the war. You have vision, you have ideas, but then Russia invades Ukraine.
Yes.
Tell us what's going through your heart and mind in those first few days.
We have the first Ukrainians, they book a room through booking. So we have the second day of war in 26, 27 of February. Already we had 2 families in the hotel. And we get in touch with them, and then we told them that, hey, please tell your friends or spread the news that this is a place where people can come, and we will accommodate for free. We will give free meals, and so the news spread. We had, until now, we had around 160 Ukrainian that were transitioning here. Some they stood here, and some they are here. They didn't know where to go. Many of them, they flee from Ukraine, going through West. They were thinking they will stay 1 night, 2 nights to rest in the hotel, and then they will go somewhere in the West. But because they meet us and they see that, okay, we are here and we support, they find a flat, we find schools for their children, and some of them, they choose to stay in Cluj, and they love this city and this place.
I see online and the different social media posts, and I also know because we share the same driver for some of our projects. Volodya, привет. If you're watching or listening, you have been doing a lot of humanitarian aid through different partners, but to different parts of Ukraine from the beginning. It seemed like, even until the past week or two. How did that come about, and how much time is that taking in your world?
We have been prepare also with the logistic, and even when I call Anka, my colleague, to be a manager of a meeting point, the place, here. And she says that, Radesh, we need a soft of 8,000 euro. The war came,
Like an emergency fund.
Yes, emergency fund, but also it helped us to report and to be very transparent with our, donors. So when the war came, people want to donate, also companies, but they want reports for their money. They want everything to be, very transparent and everything. So we have been prepared. And even we said, we can receive money as much as you want to send because we are transparent. We have this software. It helps us to know exactly where the money went and everything. So really, I saw God, that sometimes you have to plan. You have to be prepared to hold what God is giving to you. You can ask resources, but what you do with that resources, and how God can use you and your people or the logistic that you have so you can hold on what he gives to you to be good administrators. So I saw God in this because were companies from Ireland or other places, France, that they call us, because they hear that we do these transports and they wanted to do it through us. So yes, the first transports we sent to brothers and sisters Methodists in Ukraine, because they all run from in Uzhgorod, close to our border. So we start to send weekly transports with food. But then when we receive more Ukrainian here from Odessa, from Slavutich, from other places, they have been people that have been with influence in their places, and they say, hey, the government asked us this, or the hospital in Odessa asked our maternity in Odessa, orphanage in Odessa. We have an orphanage from Kiev that we move him here, and now it's 150 kilometers from Cluj, where we have an orphanage that we take care of this orphanage. So it was amazing how God worked, and put us in touch with people, with Ukrainian. Now we have 4 Ukrainian employees, have projects for the next 2 years. We even win a EU project for the Ukraine, with a psychologist to offer support. And we realized after 2-3 months that we need to plan for long term, because the war will not stop. So we were thinking, let's do projects for long term. We need to help the community.
That's a different mindset, isn't it?
Yes.
The first response period was so much chaos.
Yes, it was. Everybody wants to help, and it was, even we received so much money for food, right. And then I said, okay, I can use this money very easily. In 1 week I can send. Right. I sent 7,000 euro transport. Only once. In one area with food. And I said, yes, people need food. I don't say that, and we have to do this. But also, we have now in Cluj, I think that maybe thousands of Ukrainian we have in Cluj. That you work with them, and they are here. They are lost. they need jobs. Also, you have yesterday a meeting with those that they want to start a business, and they have a problem that they cannot start a business because they don't have an address in Romania where to start their business. So we were thinking, hey, let's help these people to help their people.
Right. Yeah, to establish themselves, those that are starting their lives. It's a completely different way of serving and helping.
Yes.
And so it's been hard because the war continues. Kind of have to pick and choose. Are we
That's hard.
Response to suffering immediately, or are we going to try and help a few people really get on their feet? And that's been very difficult and frustrating. I also remember the first few times we were talking, there's, the elderly, the disabled, really those that nobody wants to help. It's one thing to take, some young, 20, 30-year-old women, maybe a single mom with a kid, but to take someone in a wheelchair, to bring someone who wets the bed or needs a caretaker full time. This has been deeper level of serving that I've seen your team taking on, saying yes to, but you're limited. You're not the UN. We look at these big NGOs that are just multi-million, hundreds of staff, but I'm convinced, my perspective only, is what I've seen and continue to see, individuals, small groups of people, churches, believers, charity folks, doing hundreds of things everywhere, orchestrated by God, I think.
Amen.
In the end, I think we'll look back and see the providence of God, not with these huge, yesterday I saw another 3 billion of aid or something, or whatever. These numbers are so astronomical, but who takes care of that man in the wheelchair? Who takes care of that grandma who doesn't have a home to go back to and is too old to go to work? So the Romanian...
Or who will bury the Ukrainian? 1 month ago, that we have in a monastery near Cluj, elderly people. One of the elderly men died. And his wife was there, So you have to take care of everything, of his funeral. So the cost with the funeral was 1,500 euro. Because we have to bury him in Romania. We cannot send him back to Ukraine. It's very, very expensive to do this. So this is things that...
all the things you don't think
You
about.
don't think about, but you need to care about this also.
Somebody's time. And I just say that for our Western friends, that thank you so much for...
Yes.
The first few months was so much financial relief. It was great. But as ministries and charities are moving on, the work is still there. And so volunteers are still needed and finances are still needed, but they're not for the same things necessarily. But thank you to everyone who's given. And
each one of us will do our parts, and it's important for those that, okay, I'm in America, what can I do? I can support the ministry, and that's great. Also, you are also part, because without this money, we cannot really help. We also have now a grant from America that we want to integrate the teenagers in the Romanian communities, because they want to do a school in Cluj only for Ukrainians. And then they will be isolated. So we will give for 40 youth, for 6 months, we will pay a sports activity, a music, or something that they did and they love in Ukraine and they want to continue here. So we will put them in touch with those music, sports, soccer places where they can continue to do what they love to do, but also to integrate them in the Romanian society, because some of them, they don't have where to go back. Their houses are not anymore in place, And these are our vision and plans. It's what we will do for the people here, but not only for now, but for the future, to help them to feel safe. We did 2 camps for Ukrainians, and your daughter was also Ukrainian, American, Romanian, so they can feel that they are part of community.
do you have vision outside of Ukrainians? This wasn't what you thought you were going to be doing 5 years ago, 2 years ago, last year.
We want to create here a space, where for the community. That's why we are here in a coffee place for teenagers. So here we will continue with our activities for teenagers. So the activities that we did until the war, we continue with the rooms for people coming for treatment in Cluj and all the other. We have a project with the orphans that they go out of the orphanage. We have a 2 years program here for the girls, 6 girls. They are already, some of them, they stay here, they work for us. One at the first desk, one helping with the breakfast. So, and also the vision with the church, because the church is integrated part. It's true that even the Ukrainian now, they are coming to church. I mean, I talk about Ukrainian that have not been used with this kind of church. They were Orthodox and believers that maybe it's the first time when they come in touch with
with born-again Orthodox.
Born-again Orthodox, but work for them, and they are happy. They come every Sunday, but now we need to switch because they need translation, and the vision continue, and our hearts for the community and what we want to create in this place will go on. But now the Ukrainian, it's part of our community. They have their own programs. They have their own meetings where we try also to be part, or the Romanians, or we have a Wednesday night dinner for the Ukrainian where we try to bring also Romanians and to have this community type of things.
Well, we share that heart and I for creating space and letting people come into a welcoming, loving atmosphere. I think it's you do it really well. I think your team does it really well too, and it's a joy. I'm so thankful we found just the friendships here in Cluj. We haven't ventured out into too much of the religious sphere for the same reasons that you had early on. Is God has really kept us from being boxed into a particular set of dogma, doctrine, or a way of even seeing the world, constantly trying to learn and grow and be salt and light.
Amen.
In the center of wherever we are being planted.
The incarnated church. I think that we and every time I'm thinking about Jesus, how incarnate his ministry, and this is one of the mystery that we need to know how to incarnate our message, in a way that this message will pass through.
Theosis. I almost brought the book, but that's for our next podcast.
Yes, it's a good beginning.
We'll go deep into
introduction.
I think we'll lose all our listeners if we keep talking about some of that. So thank you so much, Radosh, the monk.
Yes.
Thank you for your time, your story. And for all the listeners, I'll put Radosh's, the name of the ministry here is Meeting Point. Probably should have said that at the beginning. Meeting Point. And if you're ever in Cluj or in Romania, come.
Or you need a place for accommodation.
Come to the inn. There's always space at the inn.
Yes.
Here at the hotel and the different folks here. So thank you so much for listening.